Good day and happy Friday. Another edition to the Red Teaming series. And this week I'm going to touch on the topic of physical breaching. This is definitely by far one of the most favourite parts of it and the most interesting. Throughout this series so far, we've been really focusing on the cyber attack. What information can be found in open source intelligence gathering? How can they create a compelling campaign? How can they phish you? How can they then compromise an internal device, and from that internal device pivot within the network and potentially escalate their privileges to gain a greater foothold in your network? But it's not all about cybersecurity. It's also about the physical security that you have within a building. I think the crux of it is not just about cybersecurity, but about data security. And how can somebody who has got malicious intent get their hands on your data itself? So physical breach is just that. It's literally somebody coming on site with malicious intent to try and steal data, gather information, by posing as a person who's got legitimate reason for being there, but hasn't got legitimate reason for being there. Basically a con. This is probably by far one of the most creative attacks that somebody can do to you. It takes a lot of effort and it takes a special skill to be able to barefaced lie to somebody whilst not blushing or breaking into a sweat, which gives the game away. So as part of this, very similar to the cyber attack, there's an element of reconnaissance that needs to be undertaken. And this is quite simply sitting out on the roadside with a long zoom camera, long zoom lens camera, looking at your staff members, looking at the patterns of people coming and going, looking at your opening times, when are there peak traffics, when is there peak traffic, when is there not peak traffic, where do people hang out, when do people typically go for lunch, when they go for lunch, do they have lanyards around their neck with their name badge on it, which we could take a snap of and try and mimic. Patterns within the business that typically an organization has. The other thing that they're also looking for are weak points in the business as well. Are there smoking areas where a door gets left open, people coming in and out? Do people just leave doors open, propped open with a box or something like that to let air flow in during the summer? Are windows left open on a regular basis that aren't kept on a catch that can be quite easily pried and jumped in? Again, what we're not doing as part of the physical attack is actually damaging anything. So we're not going to try and take a jimmy bar to a window or a door or try and pick the locks necessarily, but it's looking for those susceptible points that are quite easily exploited. One of the other common attack vectors is what they call tailgating. Probably all heard about this, but it is quite simply having somebody hold the door open for you whilst you walk in with them. The common thread that all physical breach prey upon is the fact that as a species, as human nature, we are always trying to help somebody else. It always gives us a bit of endorphins, a bit of a feel-good factor to be somebody who's helped somebody else. It's nice to do it. And from holding a door open to giving somebody some advice, whatever the case might be, we're here to try and help each other, and the guys leverage that. It's very, very uncommon for somebody to be abrasive and argumentative and question why somebody's there when that person looks like they need some help. Once inside the building, and again posing potentially as a member of staff, it's about trying to get into certain locations in the building that may be restricted. We're looking at file stores, we're looking at server rooms, we're looking at potentially offices that may hold financial information or personal information. Other areas that the guys are going to be looking at are photocopier rooms, for example, and I suppose in the old days, the post room. What information is just readily lying around? What information is within a photocopier that hasn't been removed yet? Is there anything important in there? We're looking at desktops. What information is readily left on top of desktops of work that people are currently actually working on? Obviously, a clear desk policy is what organizations should be operating to, not only from a threat from external coming in a physical breach perspective, but also just from an interdepartmental segregation of duties, that certain people shouldn't see other elements of the business. So again, have these been put in a drawer? Is that drawer locked? We look through bins. We do bin diving. It's the joy of the job. But how much information is actually being thrown away in waste baskets, in the bins outside the business as well? Once they've all been collated in the baskets, can we actually jump into the dumpster outside that's holding the information and possibly get something from there? We have had engagements in the past where no access to the building's been had. We've not managed to breach, but we have managed to get into the dumpster itself. And although the dumpsters had only just been emptied that day, there has been one single A4 sheet document, which is the financials of a certain client, that have been stuck to the wall of the bin. And it was just fortuitous that that information was there to be had. But unfortunately, it hadn't been shredded, so it was the whole entire document. Obviously, in order to try and prevent a physical breach, an organization puts physical barriers in place. So, for example, you may have a door entry system that runs off an RFID token on a swipe card. The problem with that is that there are technologies out there which allows us to scan for those RFIDs and clone them, enabling us to have an ID card which will enable us access into that organization just as a member of staff would have. Other door entry security barriers that we come across are physical barriers. These are typically hip height, or slightly higher than hip height, in most buildings, and made out of glass. Quite easy to vault, if I'm quite honest with you. One of the other methods that the guys will use in physical breach is disguise. It's very Mission Impossible, very Hollywood, but it's very cool. And quite simply, having a shave or changing a pair of glasses or wearing a hat, changing your coat, and all those kind of things can, even those subtle things can make a great amount of difference from being identified. I think, as I've suggested right throughout this series, whether it's a cyber attack or a physical attack, the onus is on awareness. Pay attention to what's in front of you, whether it's on screen or whether it's physically in front of you. Just be aware of what's going on in your environment. Be in the moment. Understand that there are threats out there, and just be mindful and ask the question, is this legitimate? Is what I'm seeing actually what I'm expecting? Again, I hope that this has been of some interest. Again, like I say, the physical breach side of the business on red teaming is fascinating for me from that psychological perspective of how they can manipulate you to do actions you wouldn't necessarily do for a complete stranger. So I hope it's been of use, and look forward to speaking to you again.